Hello, and welcome back to Pinebrook Homestead. I have a question for you. Do you seem to have too much month and not enough money right now? I mean, it's the end of the month. The first of the month is Friday, which most people get paid on, but then the mortgage is due and the rent's due and all the bills are due at the first of the month. So what are you going to feed your family? Let's start with some reverse meal planning. And you might ask, what is that? Well, we are going to get into the pantry and we're going to pull out things that we have and we are going to create 4 meals with those items. So let's get into the kitchen and I'll share the first 2 with you. All right, we are in the kitchen, my favorite place to be. And I've pulled some odds and ends out and I'm coming up with 2 meals. Now these are just ideas. But this is what I want you to do. Sometimes as frugal homemakers, we have to be creative. I know I don't want to go to the grocery store this week. I've got bills coming up on the first of the month. So I am resourcing what we have in our pantry and the freezer, and we're going to show you 2 meals. What do I have first? I have a half a container of cottage cheese. I've got some tomatoes that I had to force ripen from the garden, and a box of thick spaghetti. I also have some chicken that we scored on one of our grocery hauls, 6 potatoes, a sourdough bread I baked last Thursday, and a can of corn. Let's get started. So our first dinner is a fresh tomato pomodoro sauce. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the stem out of the tomatoes and then I am grating the tomato to make this fresh sauce. It is refreshing, I must say. My family does enjoy this. Typically, I only make this once a year in the summertime. I have not made it yet. And like I had said, I had to do some force ripening on tomatoes, and that was all we had. So perfect ingredient way to use up the tomatoes. And I hope this is something that you all will try. This recipe actually came from Gilda, and it's out of her Gilda's Italy cookbook. But I had to tweak some things. She always has a lot of basil. I don't have any unless it is coming out of my freezer. She also does a smash and peel on the garlic where I choose to chop it up and incorporate the garlic. My husband and I love garlic. So she removes her garlic. She just uses it for flavor in the oil. But like I said, I do chop it up and keep it within the sauce. We really enjoy it that way. So if you watched my preserving fresh herbs video, this was a method that I used with my chives. Now with this, I use it with basil. Basil does not dry as well in the dehydrator. I do dry some, but I actually enjoy this method better, which is where I take the basil, put it into the ice cube trays, and then cover it in olive oil. So I just took one of those cubes, put it into the bottom of the pot, let it melt, and then I put my garlic in to cook until fragrant. This sauce comes together so easy. All you're going to do is add the fresh tomatoes. I stir everything in, and then I let it heat up, especially while the pasta boils. Don't forget to salt your water. That is the key to pasta not sticking together, is well salted water, and I just use kosher salt to do that. So we are going to cook the pasta until it's al dente because we won't be straining it. In the recipe, Giada says to reserve a cup of the pasta water, and that is a key to a great pasta. But I have enough liquid, so I'm not going to be adding that. As you can see, I used cottage cheese. Now, in her recipe, it calls for ricotta, but I didn't have any. And I remember, the poor man's lasagna where we used cottage cheese instead of ricotta. And I thought, why not? I'm going to do it this way. So I am just pulling the pasta right out of the boiling water and adding it directly into the sauce. And then we'll toss it and put on a little bit of Parmesan cheese. The nice thing about this dinner is it comes together in under 30 minutes. And it's good, it's refreshing, you have your vegetables. And then, like I said, I top with some Parmesan. Parmesan is something that I always keep in the refrigerator. I buy my blocks at Costco. They are by far the best price. And it is a huge block of Parmesan, so it lasts me a long time. There you have it. A fresh tomato Pomodoro pasta. All right, so our next meal, I took that sourdough bread that I baked last Thursday, and I toasted it a little bit and then put it in my blender to make breadcrumbs. I'm taking my 6 potatoes and we're making up some mashed potatoes. And it's funny, these potatoes were not that big. And I was actually questioning, am I going to have enough for the 4 of us? And we did, plus some left over for lunch the next day. Again, I salt my water with kosher salt, and then I just boil the potatoes. So we have flour, and I'm going to be adding some salt and pepper to the flour mixture. And then I have my egg mixture. Which is just 2 whole eggs. And then I have the breadcrumbs from the sourdough bread. I am adding a little bit of paprika to it. And we are making chicken tenders. So this container of chicken breasts has 3 chicken breasts in it. If I was to just bread 3 breasts, that would not feed 4 of us. But if I cut it up, it actually gave me 15 chicken tenders. So we had plenty between the 4 of us and some left over for lunch. So my frying method when I do chicken tenders, I will take the piece of chicken and roll it in the flour first. And then I will put it into the egg mixture and then directly into the breadcrumbs. And I find that this makes a nice crunchy coating on the chicken tender. Now, you don't have to use sourdough bread. Maybe you've kept the heels off your bread and made your own breadcrumbs. That works too. This is just what I had, and I needed to use it up. So I'm going to continue this method with all of the chicken tenders. And then we're going to fry them up. And this is another dinner that doesn't take long, and I guarantee you it's kid approved. So I do my frying with tallow. Um, I have always said on this channel, my husband and I purchase a cow every year, and we do ask for the tallow or the fat of the cow. My eldest son actually renders it down for us, and they make not only tallow balm, but you can see the candle on my stove. That is a tallow candle, and I'm trying it out for her. And I have to tell you, I love it. It burns so slow. And Pinebrook Homestead might just have to uh, commission her to make us some special candles or something. I'm so thrilled with these candles. But I'm just going to fry these, and it's about 4 to 5 minutes on each side until they're golden brown. The nice thing about tallow is it has a very high heat point. Now, if you don't have tallow, you could use avocado oil, you could use coconut oil. Those would be the two that I would recommend. Uh, I know some people still use vegetable oil and everything. I try to stay away from those types of oils. And you just fry everything up in batches until everything is cooked and completed. You could make some honey mustard sauce to go with this. I know my kids and I, we just like hot sauce and ranch. Another great idea for this, I just didn't have the time and I was reserving my milk, is to make a white gravy. Onto the mashed potatoes, I'm just going to throw 3 tablespoons of butter in. And because I'm conserving my milk for 2 more meals, I am putting in more cottage cheese. I have always had cottage cheese on top of a baked potato, and I really enjoyed it. And I thought, you know what? If my kids don't see this, they're never going to know. So I threw 3 tablespoons of cottage cheese in there, and they didn't know. It had a great tang to it, a little bit of salt. It was perfect. So always remember, if you want to substitute something that your kids might not like, just do it when they're not looking. Now, some people might do the good old hand smasher for your potato smasher for your potatoes. I just pull out the blender. It's just as easy. Makes them nice and creamy. Then I'm just going to cover them up and keep them warm until the chicken is done frying. I do have that canned corn on the back of the stove heating up. And it's just a simple meal, very kid approved meal, let me tell you. There you have it. Nice, wholesome comfort meal. Now, the next meal that we are going to do is a little bit longer of a meal, but we are going to be making some chicken and dumplings. I have a big container of chicken broth I need to use up. I have a chicken that we scored on one of our meal or grocery hauls. I grabbed some carrots from my green stalk out on the deck, some frozen peas. I have garlic and onions. So very easy ingredients. And what I'm doing here is I am spatchcocking the chicken. So what that means is I'm removing the spine out of it so that one, it would lay flat, but two, I can cut the chicken up. My recommendation, if you find whole chickens like this on sale, like this, I think this one was $7.53, originally $11.56. But if you find them, I would grab them because maybe you don't want to roast a whole chicken. Maybe you want to cut it up and do barbecue chicken or something like that on the grill. So you could either spatchcock it like this and pop it on the grill. It cooks 10 times faster. Or you can cut it up to where you have 2 leg quarters and then you have your 2 breasts and 2 wings. Now, if my family was to eat like that, the whole chicken would be gone in one sitting. I have teenage boys and they like to eat. So I find that if I take a chicken like this and do something like the chicken and dumplings, it seems to go so much farther and it stretches out that meal. So I easy cut up for all the pieces of chicken. And then I have a little bit of flour. So this is a half a cup of flour. And I'm just dredging the chicken into the flour. It helps to thicken the soup or the chicken and dumplings and give it more of that gravy. We will be adding a little bit more flour, about a quarter of a cup later. But I'm just going to dredge all the pieces. And then we're going to add some olive oil to our Dutch oven. And we will brown each piece to give it a nice golden hue. Of course, I do dispose of this flour. It's probably the only thing wasteful is when I'm dipping or breading raw meat or chicken. I do dispose of that. All right, so let's get browning some chicken. And it goes pretty fast. It's about 5 minutes on each side of the chicken. Now, I will share with you a funny substitution, and I have to tell you, I would not substitute it, and I wouldn't even add it. I made this a year ago when we were in a snowstorm, and I cannot recall if I used white wine, which is what the recipe calls for, but guess what? I didn't have any. And the recipe said white wine or apple cider vinegar and a half a cup. I have to tell you, I would not do it. I did not like it near as much. It had a way more vinegary taste. If you want to add the apple cider vinegar, I would actually cut it at least in half, if not more. But yeah, so that is one substitution that out of all of these dishes that I wished I would not have done, and I wish I would have just omitted it. So the chicken is brown, and now we're going to cook our vegetables until the onion is translucent. And I did add a little bit more oil in there. And this recipe is from Taste of Home. Like I said, I will link all the recipes in the description box below. I'm adding in the garlic, 3 cloves of garlic. And I just cook the garlic until it's fragrant. And then once everything is translucent, we're going to add a 1/4 cup of flour to the vegetables. Make sure to stir and cook for a few minutes so you don't have that raw flour taste. I find I do a lot of thickening this way, probably more so than with cornstarch. But I have another trick with cornstarch as well. The recipe called for 2 teaspoons of sugar, so I'm adding that in. And honestly, that's probably another ingredient I would omit. But I followed the recipe as best as I could. And then we're going to add in 6 cups of our homemade chicken broth. Now, if you don't have chicken broth, you could do 6 cups of water with 6 teaspoons or 6 cubes of bouillon. That would work as well. And I'm just stirring, letting it thicken a little bit before pouring the rest of the broth in. All right, here comes that apple cider vinegar. I'm telling you, don't add it, or at least cut it in half. It was too much for my taste. My husband liked it, but he puts apple cider vinegar in his water to drink, and I can't handle that either. So I would omit the apple cider vinegar and then add 2 bay leaves. And then we're just going to take our chicken and nestle it back in. And this will be the final cook for the chicken. The recipe says to bring the pot to a boil, and then you want to turn it down to a simmer and cook for about 25 to 30 minutes, or at least until the chicken juices run clear. So we're going to put the lid on and bring it up to a boil. Once I reached 30 minutes, I'm going to pull the chicken out. Make sure that it's cooked. And it is. It looks good. And then we're going to take the skin off and debone it so that all we have left is the chicken. Now, could you do something like this with canned chicken? Yeah, you could. Canned chicken can be expensive though. So like I said, whenever I find those whole chickens marked down, I grab them up. I can do so many things with them. So funny, I'm doing it, properly with the forks. But after I did this first bit, I kind of said, forget about the forks, and the chicken was cool enough. So I got my hands in there and just got the meat off of the bones. Best way, just get your hands in there and get dirty. So we've got our big bowl of chicken, and we're going to return it to the pot. It does smell good, but I'm telling you, I could smell the vinegar. And then because I did not have celery and the recipe called for celery and my husband requested some peas, I threw a cup of frozen peas in there. And what I do when I buy frozen vegetables, I bring them home and I put them in the food saver bags so that they don't get freezer burn. I find if I just pop them in the freezer, they're gone. There's last night's corn. Have to use it up. Why not put it in? Lid back on, bring it up to a simmer, and let's make the dumplings. So the flour mixture is 1 1/3 cup flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and 3/4 teaspoon of salt. I'm going to mix in 2/3 cup of milk. One reason why I was reserving milk. And then a tablespoon of melted butter. And that's it. All right, so let's add our dumplings. I'm just going to take a scoop at a time and add it in there. Now the dumplings are going to cook with the lid on for about 15 to 18 minutes. I keep the soup or it's a kind of a soup stew. I keep it at a simmer once I put the lid on to cook the dumplings. And it's a sticky dough, as you can see, but easy to work with and delicious. Now, this dinner does take a couple hours to do, but it was worth it. Here's another trick. It called for heavy whipping cream. I didn't have any. And I just took my whole milk and I put a teaspoon of cornstarch in it to kind of thicken it a little bit before adding it to the soup for the creaminess. And it worked. Heavy whipping creams is another thing that I find super expensive in our stores in my area. Sometimes it's just not worth the $5. So it says to add the heavy whipping cream or my milk cornstarch concoction gently in and around the dumplings of the chicken and dumplings. So that's kind of what we're doing and just stirring in between the dumplings. We don't want to disturb them or break them up. And then last but not least, I did go out and get some fresh thyme from the garden. It called for thyme and parsley. I have fresh thyme, but I did not have fresh parsley. I only had dried. So that is what I used. And I just sprinkled it over the top. Great meal that fed all of us, plus lunches. All right, last but not least, this is another quick 30-minute meal. And this is a homemade hamburger helper with some substitutions. So we have our pound of ground beef. I have 6 ounces of elbow macaroni, 2 cups of milk, onion, broccoli, and then I am adding in the last cup of peas to this. And it calls for a cup of cheddar cheese. Well, I didn't have a cup. So we used half cheddar and half mozzarella. It worked out great. I'm just going to brown the ground beef and a little bit of olive oil. I like to put a little bit of olive oil in these cast iron Dutch ovens. Now, I have done homemade hamburger helper type pasta meals before, and I know some of them have you cook the pasta in the dish. I find, though, the pasta will absorb the liquid, and I like things creamy. So this recipe said to cook the pasta separately, and that's what we did. I really appreciate all of you watching today. This has been such a joy. I love cooking in the kitchen. And if you enjoy this content, would you please consider subscribing to our channel? It really does help us out and help us grow. Also keeps you updated on all the new videos that we put out. So rather than dumping the pan with the grease, because I do need a little bit of grease for the next step. So I just chose to take my strainer and pull the ground beef out. And then I'll add, I don't think I added any more. Nope. I just used the grease from the hamburger and put in the broccoli and the onion. And we are going to cook those down until the onions are translucent and the broccoli is tender. I will drain the macaroni. And then once we get our vegetables where we want them, guess what we're adding? We're going to add some flour, 2 tablespoons of flour, so that we can thicken this up. Again, make sure to stir that flour in and cook it for a little bit so you do not have the raw flour taste. But it's amazing. It works so well to thicken up your soups, your stews. Make a roux for a white sauce or macaroni and cheese. So simple. And then once that is cooked, I will add the milk. I do half at a time. Stir it around so we don't get any lumps. So the recipe calls for a tablespoon of tomato paste. I do say I love those tubes of tomato paste because when you just need a tablespoon, you do not have to open a whole can. And then it asks for a teaspoon of Dijon mustard. Now, I'm sure you could use regular mustard. You could probably even use dry mustard if you don't have the other two. So always keep in mind for your substitutions what you can and cannot do. And other than apple cider vinegar, don't substitute that. Leave that out. I should have known better, but you know. I am then going to add the cheese. And like I said, it calls for a cup of cheddar. I didn't have it. I buy my cheese in blocks and then I grate it myself. So I had a little bit of cheddar and I had some mozzarella, and that's what we used. It's so much cheaper when you buy the cheese by the block and grate it yourself. And did you know that you can freeze the cheese? I do that. When it goes on sale, I will buy up a couple and I will throw them in my freezer along with my butter. My kids were laughing at me about my butter sale, but real, I mean, if I buy 5 things of butter on sale, I'm saving $10. It's incredible. Last but not least, I'm going to add in the spices. So this recipe called for garlic. I chose to use garlic powder today. It also asked for paprika, salt, and pepper. And then once everything is melted, then you're just going to add back in your beef. Oh yes, I forgot about the peas. No waste. But then once everything's heated up, melted, ooey gooey, then you're going to add in the beef and your elbow macaroni. And there you have it. You have a one pot, comes together very quickly. In under 30 minutes, you could put a healthy dinner on the table for your family. So there you have it, folks. 4 meals made out of the pantry and freezer. And they've created 5 days of dinners for us and some lunches for my husband. And I didn't go to the grocery store. You see through a lot of these that I had to use substitutions. I didn't have celery, didn't use them, used frozen peas instead. There's so many different things that you can do, but the key is to be able to take that $5 a week and stock up. So whether it's frozen vegetables on sale, tomato sauce or a can of tomatoes, or pasta or rice, whatever it is, whatever your family uses. When you find those markdown deals on your chicken and your meat, grab them and put them away when your budget allows. So when the week comes and it's tight, you have sources that you can pull from and do your own reverse meal plan. Thank you so much for watching Pinebrook Homestead today. I hope you enjoyed these series and the dinners. I will link the recipes in the description box below. But remember, I didn't have all the ingredients. You can use substitutions. Thank you so much. I appreciate you all from the bottom of my heart. Have a wonderful day. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.